My name is Alexus Jackson. I'm a current postbac student at Stanford University in the new REACH program. I'm in their cohort 2. And I graduated from San Jose State University and I played soccer for that university. Had a fun time there. But I majored in biological sciences and minored in chemistry. And while I was an undergrad, I did a little bit of research in a neurophysiology lab. The specific name of the lab is Dr. Catherine Wilkinson's lab. And I'm now in Dr. Jennifer Raymond's lab. Many people, actually, the majority of my lab they are PhDs. So they've gone to do their PhD and they're now in their postdoc and now pursuing jobs outside of the lab setting. Whereas I am a person pursuing research, but also applying to medical school. And so, yeah, that's me. So my highest degree level, I would say right now, is my undergrad degree. So that's my introduction.
I have a few questions. So what made you really want to choose biological sciences?
Yeah, so I think so I went to undergrad knowing that I wanted to potentially go to medical school. And I think a common misconception with people who want to do that is that they have to major in biological sciences or some type of science. And that was my understanding when I went to undergrad as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. I pursued this major specifically because when you do a science major as a pre-med or someone that wants to go to medical school, you fulfill all of the requirements, the prereqs, in order to get into medical school. So medical schools will say, we need you to take physics, chemistry, or OChem, organic chemistry, and all these classes. And this major allowed me to do that as a part of the major. And the minor in chemistry just kind of happened along with it. And it's easy to get a minor in chemistry because a lot of the chemistry courses I was already taking as requirements for my biological sciences degree. I think I only had to take something like a lab safety course in order to actually get the minor. So all the chemistry courses like OChem, lab for OChem, those were all a part of the minor requirements. And then I just had to do one more course to get it. So it was pretty easy to do it. It wasn't like I was doing extra studying outside of my major.
Could you talk a little bit more about the research that you're doing in Dr. Jennifer Raymond's lab?
But right now in Dr. Jennifer Raymond's lab, well, let me start off with, actually, let me go back. So in undergrad, I did research in Dr. Catherine Wilkinson's lab to study proprioception. And proprioception is our sense of our body in space. It's how our brain understands where we are, even when like my eyes are closed. I know my hand can touch my nose. That's proprioception. And we have these specific neurons, the muscle spindle afferents, that in our muscles, they sense stretch and changes in length. And being an athlete in undergrad, I was like, this seems really interesting and it kind of applies to what I'm doing while I'm playing soccer. So that's what got me into doing research in neuroscience. And then so in doing the postbac, I think the reason for wanting to do the postbac was feeling like I didn't do enough research as an undergrad student. I wanted to be more productive before I wanted to go to medical school. And I wanted to show medical schools when I do apply this year that I have experience being an independent researcher in a very competitive setting. So now that brings me to neuroscience in Dr. Raymond's lab. And having had experience in neuroscience as an undergrad, I felt a little bit more comfortable staying within this field in my postbac because I learned so much. I didn't really want to venture outside of it to do other types of research. And so what we do is we study memory, specifically memory consolidation. And if you can see on the bottom left of the slide, memory consolidation is the process of taking what you've just learned and making it into long-term memory. And I was really interested in that. It's a little bit different from studying proprioception like I did in undergrad, but I love this subject as well.
Yeah,
and
and
so
which one
what
do you
we do,
enjoy more?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like this research that I'm doing now is so, to me, even now, it's taking me a long time to grasp everything. And I feel like I maybe had an easier time learning the background of what I was doing in undergrad. Not that it was easier, but I think just because it applied more to like physiology, like our bodies, whereas this lab now is strictly neuroscience and the brain is so complex. Like there's so much more to learn about it. So I think this subject is more difficult, but I probably enjoy them both equally. Um,
That's really cool. So this one's a
yeah,
little bit more abstract.
I'd say so just because there's so much to learn. Every journal club that we have, I'm constantly reading papers, right? But it's like
Yeah.
someone will bring up this new cell, this new finding that they have, and so it almost, this field specifically with the brain almost seems never ending. Like I can't stop
I
learning
get
more
that.
about it, which is a challenge because you just at some point you want to just feel comfortable and like, okay, I have a good understanding of things, but you're constantly learning,
Yeah.
which is a good thing. So I think that's why I chose this lab, was that I knew I was going to be challenged, but it was kind of similar to what I did in undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
So we study memory consolidation, and essentially, the bottom right of the slide is how can we enhance this process. So we work with animals, specifically mice, and we train them to make specific eye movements, and then we test them on how well they remember those eye movements, but then we also give them different conditions between their training and their test. So one condition is that they are stationary and they aren't moving at all. Another is that they're given small inputs similar to the training input, so they move similar to the training. And then another one is that we allow them to just roam in their cage after they've been trained. And so we test which condition improves their memory, the memory of those eye movements that we train them to make. And I have no results right now because we are grinding it out. We're still working
Yeah,
on a
yeah.
lot of things, gathering a lot of data. I think, as you will all learn, if you continue in research, is that you can have a plan. Like we have this beautiful plan below in the experiment, but it's always changing. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so my interest in research started as kind of just fulfilling a requirement. Again, I'm pre-med, and so I think a lot of pre-meds feel like we just have to do research to get it done and check off that box because medical schools like it, right? That was
Yeah.
kind of my thought at first. And then I genuinely fell in love with the process of doing research and being at the bench, and also the critical thinking skills that I was acquiring from research in undergrad. But that's how it started. And I would say that that's not necessarily true. Research is not a explicit requirement by medical schools, but they like to see it, so that's why I did it. And now what's kept me going is that I enjoy all the skills that I've learned, which are stated in V there, 5.
Yeah.
I've learned so much, like reading and comprehension, critical thinking skills, um, how to be how to be a good experimental designer, and then also how to just keep being persistent as well, because science is difficult. And those are some of the things I've learned. And then the people that have inspired me, so this is my current postdoc in the first picture. um, Sometimes when you are a junior scientist, what you'll have is you'll be assigned to a person who has already completed their PhD and who is
Mm-hmm.
later on in their career, so that they can mentor you and help you with experiments. And so the first lady pictured here, her name is Negar Asadian. So she is my mentor now, and she's inspired me a lot. She's one of the most patient, but also persistent, and also she obviously demonstrates all of the skills that I've acquired since doing research. So she's one of the people that have inspired me. And then this is my undergraduate PI, in the middle, Dr. Catherine Wilkinson. So your PI is your private, not private, your principal investigator, the person who is funding the research that you are doing. And then on the right is Dr. Theanne Griffith. I've actually never worked with her, but she helped me a lot to draft my personal statements, to get into various prep programs, especially Stanford's prep program that I'm in right now.
Yeah.
So she was very instrumental. They all happen to be female, and I think what I'll say on that is that it's very important to pick a mentor that is kind of similar to you in some way, can speak to
Mm-hmm.
all of your strengths as a person. And I've always admired the female scientists that I've come across throughout my
Yeah,
undergrad
me
and
too.
my career now. So they're very special. Um, and then, were there any pivotal moments in your research career that made you change topics? To answer that, like I've already mentioned, playing soccer in undergrad got me curious about how our brain governs our body movement, which is proprioception. And so that's what made me most interested in joining Dr. Wilkinson's lab during undergrad, was that she studied proprioception.
Yeah, and then I wanted to ask a little bit about soccer because I find out I actually played ECNL until I got injured. Um
Oh wow, yeah. So you were,
yeah.
yeah, Yeah,
But
go ahead.
with sports, I know it's super time consuming. How do you balance that with research and your other studies?
Yes, yeah, it was so challenging. I think in my first semester, I had that was like if you look at my transcripts, that was like the worst grades I've had just because you're adjusting and it takes
Mm-hmm.
time. But I think what has helped me was one, staying organized and planning out my weeks, and also over communicating with all of my professors. And they would probably say that I talk to them the most as a student athlete because I needed them to be aware of this is what's happening in 2 weeks. I'm going to be gone in 2 weeks. When can I schedule this? When can I schedule that? And then I've noticed that being proactive with my professors was they become more comfortable with me and then they allow me just a little bit more leniency just because I had to miss so much school with sports. Um, so I'd say being organized and communicating with your professors is number two. And also just being ahead. I think that was one of the things. Like I always did my homework before it was due, and it was submitted like days before it was due, just because of my schedule. And also, it's gonna take a while to establish a good rhythm for yourself. Like I said, my first semester grades were the worst because I was like, well, how do I manage all this? And
Yeah.
then you just get used to it. You just adapt naturally.
Mm-hmm.
What
And
team did you
then
play for? I'm just
I'm
curious.
down in San Diego, so I played for Golden State.
Okay, I've
We're
never
a
heard
really
of them.
small club, so I don't think, yeah, most people haven't heard of it.
Yeah. Well, then you went to no, you're at San Marcos High School.
Yeah,
I wonder. I have a teammate who's at my school now, Kayla Fortenberry. I don't. You might be too
I
young
don't
to
think
know
I've
her.
heard of her.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I know she's from San Marcos too. That's why I bring it up. But yeah,
We have a really good soccer team.
yeah.
Yeah, and then also moving on, I think it's really cool that you're part of the REACH program at
Hmm.
Stanford. Do you mind talking a little bit about that and like kind of the experiences you've gained?
Yes. So first, what I thought in high school and undergrad was that going to through science or going through college to get to medical school or to get a PhD, I thought it was very linear. Like you have to go to college first, get your degree, and then do your master's, and then do your PhD. And that is a good track. That's what some people do, but it's not necessarily so linear. A lot of people take pauses and a lot of people take breaks. And that's where something like a post-bac program, like what I'm doing, that's where that comes in. So just to explain and to provide some context, a post-bac program is a program that you do after you're done with undergrad. So you've got your bachelor's of science or your bachelor's of art, and you kind of feel like you're not ready yet to go on to graduate school. So you take a little break, and your post-bac is where you learn more. You kind of invest more in what you wish you would have done during undergrad. And there are various programs. Stanford Reach is unique in that it's a salaried post-bac, so I'm
Oh
being
wow.
paid to study, which is very unique. And that's why it targets underrepresented minorities and people who would otherwise not be able to um, kind of sharpen their resume if they didn't have a salary to do so. Whereas some post-bac programs, I think there's a big one for the UC system in California, where you have to pay, and that's a different post-bac design. That post-bac design is like you take specific classes that you need to boost your GPA before medical school or before graduate school. But this post-bac, I'm not actually taking classes. I'm just doing research, and I'm also doing the things that would help me apply to medical school. Some of my peers are applying to PhD grad schools. So what they're doing is they're probably writing their essays right now, whereas I just got done with the MCAT and I'm also about to start
Oh,
writing essays soon. Yeah,
yeah.
so that's our program is pretty unique. So my point for this slide is that careers in science are not linear. A lot of people take a break after their undergrad to go work, and then they come back and they apply to medical school or apply to their PhD programs that they want. And so when I learned about what a post-bac program was, I was like, this sounds really cool, and I think I want to do it because I don't feel ready yet, and I want to do more research. So that's why I chose it.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's cool. I didn't know a postbac existed until I started talking to you, but I looked more into
yeah,
it, and that's something that I feel like a lot of people could explore potentially.
absolutely. So yeah, a post-bac is really cool. It's a good option for people who just aren't ready to go to grad school yet. and they want more experience. So, and
Mm-hmm.
Stanford Reach specifically, I'll give you more info on that. I realized I didn't talk about the program itself, but the benefits of my program that we're doing is that one, I got assistance with taking the MCAT. I got tutors who are currently at the medical school here to help us obviously learn the concepts that are needed from the MCAT. We have a community of students who are on the same track as us. So there are, I think, 10 of us taking the MCAT and wanting to do an MD, and then the rest are PhD oriented folks. So they are getting different type of support from the program. The program provides experience with meeting with actual clinicians that work here. So doctors and PhDs who work here, they come and speak to us all the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I think the program also teaches us. I think we have a few grant writing workshops, which if you guys go into science, you'll learn that grants, we as students, we have to go right to people and ask for money. So learning that skill is great as well. And so we have a bunch of stuff coming up, but the program really supports us by one, financially supporting us, which is really important. Two, by helping us with the experience side of things. They're immersing us in the experience that is necessary to be successful in graduate school and medical school. So that's why I chose this program in particular.
Like, what type of specialty are you hoping for?
Ooh, I ask myself that every day. I think since I played sports, I always said like sports medicine would be great. It's really fun. But I don't know if I want to do orthopedics, surgical or non-surgical orthopedics. I don't know yet. I'm still trying to shadow a lot of doctors to see what I want. I've been scribing though, and
Oh,
a medical, you know what that is, right? A medical scribe takes notes during patient
yeah.
visits. Yeah, so I did that in the emergency room, and I kind of like the idea of emergency medicine. So I'm a little bit all over the place about my specialty right now.
That's
Yeah.
still really cool though.
You asked later on, like, what could high
Yeah.
schoolers do to get, sorry, this is a lot. Everybody could just read this later, but just to sum it up. For E, how did I find my passion? How would you suggest high schoolers find their passion in research? I think, um, I think my passions kind of change all the time. They've stayed relatively within the same field of neuroscience. Like I shifted from undergrad to doing neurophysiology to just neuroscience. But they stayed within the same field. And I think if your interests change drastically, like you want to do biomedical engineering and then you kind of switch and want to do something entirely different, just follow that. You guys are all still very early on, and I think what you guys can do now is just ask questions, and maybe even like what you're doing now is obviously very helpful, like interviewing people in different stages of their career. So I think just follow each and every one of your passions, because it's just going to change naturally. And I
Yeah.
think, how did I narrow down my specific field? Since undergrad, I had some experience in neuroscience. I felt more comfortable bringing that into my post-bac. I didn't want to switch things up very much. And I honestly didn't have any other field that I was interested in other than neuroscience, neuro-oriented research. And then G and H, yeah, so I loved this question. And I wish that I had started learning how to read scientific papers earlier on. Yeah, in undergrad and even now, what we do is something called a journal club, where someone kind of takes the lead on reading a paper. Obviously, everyone reads the paper, but someone takes the lead on constructing a presentation of all the figures within a paper, and then everyone just pretty much goes through and discusses it. It's very chill. It doesn't have to be super strict. You guys can learn that before you get to undergrad, or even just start developing the habit of reading papers. That'd be so amazing. And then I think I added, don't go through the motions of your labs. I remember AP Bio, and for some reason, I don't think I cared enough to really learn about why I was doing certain things, or why certain things were happening. I was just trying to get through the class, even though I enjoyed it. Just the class itself was kind of irritating. It's AP Bio. But I think just don't go through the motions. Really take your time to learn why, because what you're learning is actually going to benefit you during your undergrad.
Yeah.
And then make your science teachers your friends and ask them about their career choices and perhaps any opportunities to practice research with them outside of school.
But I know that like a lot of teachers were in industry before they went into teaching, and so they
Mm,
have a lot of real life experiences. And I don't think we
yeah.
realize that because they never talk about it.
Right, exactly. So I think with your club, maybe you guys pick a teacher and you just hammer them with questions. I think that's a great idea as well. And that's another thing I'll add. Like I remember my AP bio teacher who I also had for freshman bio. He was so amazing and so interesting. And when I really asked him questions about his time in undergrad, he always had such deep and enriched experiences to tell me about. But it's just like you have to take the time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So science teachers are your friends. And I also think volunteer and shadow people in your field of interest. I mentioned that earlier. Start now because I think while you are so early on in your career, it's so fun to just see people doing different things. Like even if they're in industry, maybe if you could find a day to go to work with them, like that'd be really fun to just see. It's a lot easier said than done, obviously, but I think if you make it your goal to maybe shadow like two people in one school year, like that'd be really great. And I think oh, another thing I wanted to add, I didn't write this down. I think do things outside of science as well. Like volunteer for your community and maybe take a seat back and like look at what are some of the things that could better my community and go learn how to be like a personable person that can talk to people. That's a great skill to develop now as well.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think
Yeah.
that goes a lot is that research has a lot of networking involved too. And so those
Yes.
soft skills are really important when you're talking to professors or just really anyone.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. You said it, a soft skill. It's like no one honestly, some people think research is like you're going to be in a room by yourself doing work alone. It's not that. Where the money comes in when you have to make money and ask for grants and proceed through your field and excel every year is when you network. So you hit the nail right
Yeah.
on the head. And then you asked what traits define a great researcher. And none of them really have to do with research. It just makes you like what makes you a good person. And I think persistence, patience, kindness, clear communicator wants to change the landscape of the field, as in diversity, inclusion, equality. If all of those things are very important to you, you're going to be an excellent researcher. So I think in my experience, the people who are best at this are the best researchers. They're the best people. If you're a good person, you're going to be a good researcher.
Hmm.
That's what I've learned.